I feel like this book is a series of Odysseus being approached by usually a god telling him, here's a plan, do this. And he goes, you're not going to get me. I've heard this one before. And is like, fine, I'll do it, but I'll do it my way.
Hello, and welcome to Winnow, a couple's close reading of the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm Owen Gemmer.
I'm Isabella Gemmer. We are married, and we love to talk about books.
In this podcast, we are working our way book by book through the entirety of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. This particular episode will cover the Odyssey Book 5.
We get to see him. It's like drum roll. The man, the myth, the legend.
Finally.
It's Odysseus! And the curtains pull back, and he's sitting on a rock sobbing. Actually not what we thought he was, maybe.
Yeah, I know. We've been seeing Telemachus get so hyped about his dad this whole time. Telemachus is going around talking to everybody, and everybody's like, "Oh, your dad's the best. He's the greatest. Oh, yeah. He's so cool and so strong and so smart, and just he's so perfect." And then perfect. First time we see him, he's just chilling on the beach, crying. Yeah. So let's get into summaries. We've been rotating who does a quick speed summary, and it is your turn, I believe.
Yeah.
So I've got a 1-minute timer, and begin.
So we open on the gods. Zeus is convinced by Athena, tells Hermes, it's time you tell Calypso to let Odysseus go. Hermes goes down, beautiful. Calypso lives in beautiful cave. Hermes tells Calypso, let him go. Calypso says, I think there's a little bit of a double standard going on here. But she says, fine, I'll let him go anyways. So she lets him go. Odysseus builds himself a raft. Off he goes. And raft immediately wrecked. He is holding onto driftwood, trying to get to some sort of land. There is a sea nymph, goddess, comes up to him and is like, here, take this sash. Once you get to land, let go of the sash, give it back to me. And he's like, okay, but I'm going to do it my way. He eventually makes it to land, throws the sash back in the water, and he falls asleep, naked.
Yeah. So my opening question that I think, based on your cold open and some of the things you've already talked about wanting to talk about, I think this will sort of capture some of that. Mm-hmm. So throughout this book, I want us to kind of think about how much of what Odysseus does is his own doing and is sort of to his credit, and how much of it is to the credit of the gods. Yeah. Yeah, and sort of the question that we have asked a lot and sort of been grumpy about in the Iliad is it often feels like the gods are sort of always just in control of things, and there's a little bit of that here, but Odysseus obviously has more than most characters in the Iliad did. And so I want to work out where that balance is here at the beginning so that we can then also trace for the rest of the book or for the rest of the Odyssey how much that changes.
Yeah. When you ask the opening question, I feel like I am having a conversation with someone and they ask me about my special niche interest, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you asked. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Well,
I've been waiting for someone to ask this, I would say that in this book, book 5, we have multiple interactions where with Odysseus. First, it is when Calypso tells him, the gods have decreed now it is your time. Go, be free. And
before that, there's the gods deciding to decree that as well.
Yeah. But when Odysseus hears this news, he doesn't jump to be free. Let's just read from the text.
Okay. We're starting in the middle.
So this is Odysseus not jumping to immediately leave the island. He says to Calypso, Goddess, you have some other scheme in mind, not my safe passage. You are telling me to cross this vast and terrifying gulf in just a raft, when even stable schooners sped on winds by Zeus would not succeed. No, Goddess, I will not get on a raft, unless you swear to me a mighty oath you are not planning yet more pain for me. And then she does. She makes this great oath and she doesn't, it seems from the narrative, she at least does not have plans to get in his way.
Right. But he is at least, right, dubious that he is being lied to or misled.
Unlike in the Iliad, right? Characters in the Iliad would get decrees from the gods and they would immediately jump to put them into action. But Odysseus in this book is like, are you sure that you're not trying to trick me? Even when they're not trying to trick it. Like Calypso isn't trying to trick him. He's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, I'm sure. And he's like, fine, I'll go. And he does that. He does that there. He does that also when the sea nymph comes out of the ocean.
Laocothea.
Yeah. When she gives him the sash, she tells him, the sash I think is supposed to be some sort of protection. She tells him, here, the sash, it will protect you. Just go, jump, swim to shore. And then when you're done, give me back my sash. And he is again like, he's like, okay, I will swim to shore eventually. But it's like this.
I'm going to wait until my raft breaks apart and I'm forced into the ocean. I'm not going to just like jump in.
Yeah. He uses his judgment as to, he does do what the goddess tells him to do on paper, which is like good, like sneaky of him, right? Like he does what the gods told him. He can't say he disobeyed any orders, right? But he does it at his own discretion. He chooses the moment that he abandons his broken raft to swim to shore and these things. Yeah.
Right. So I'm curious then, like where do you think then he is at like a 50-50 in terms of his sort of like obedience to the gods and his own will?
It seems like I sort of said, like he seems interested with making it look like on paper he did everything that was asked of him, but he does it. He takes the steps when he sees it, beneficial. It's like instead of jumping without thinking, he thinks and also jumps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I guess one of the reasons I asked this question is because as I was reading, I was struck by how frequent there is sort of like commanding language and language of sort of like compulsion, starting with the gods. Like even before Odysseus is on the scene, when Athena is trying to convince Zeus to let them go and then telling Hermes, and then Hermes is telling Calypso, there's just like, so I want to read a brief section. This is in Pope's translation, which, does take some liberties, but I think also makes it, pretty powerful. So when Hermes is talking with Calypso and basically explaining the gods' rationale for finally letting Odysseus go, Hermes says, "Saved from the jaws of death by heaven's decree, the tempest drove him to these shores, and thee, him Jove now orders to his native lands, straight to dismiss, so destiny commands. Impatient fate his near return attends, and calls him to his country and his friends." So there's all this language, right? It's both like he was saved from the jaws of death by heaven's decree. The tempest, implied like from the gods, drove him here. So we saved him from death. We drove him to you, and now we are ordering him to go home. And so from Hermes' perspective there, he's just like, we've been in charge of Odysseus this whole time, and we are continuing to be in charge, and we are continuing to like command you to let him go. And Calypso is a little bit kind of like bitter about this because she's like, but I was the one who saved him. He washed up on my shore and I offered him food and I took care of him even though he had nothing. So he's with me now. But then she sort of relents at the end of her speech. "'Tis past and Jove decrees he shall remove. Gods as we are but slaves to Jove." And so she is sort of just like, I guess I can't fight with Zeus. So I guess I'll just do it. And so she just kind of she accepts that even though she is a goddess, she has actually no control here. And so there's just all this language piling up of the gods are just dictating everything that's happening here. And then I find it interesting when Odysseus doesn't seem to like accept that mentality. Like all the gods have just sort of like got it in their head that both like we're in charge of the mortals and Zeus is in charge of us. Like they have the strict hierarchy just sort of embedded in them. But Odysseus is like willing to question that hierarchy.
Yeah. It's even at the beginning of this book, Zeus even tells us what's going to happen, similar to how he does in the Iliad. when he just lays out all the cards on the table. He says, like, our fixed intention that Odysseus must go back home. Da, 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 da. He will drift miserably for 20 days upon a makeshift raft and then arrive at fertile Scheria. The magical Phaeacians will respect him like a god and send him in a ship to his dear homeland with gifts of bronze and heaps of gold and clothing. And, like, that's roughly what does happen. I'm not sure about the drifting miserably for 20 days. I think it's less time than that.
It's like 17 though. I think it's 17 days before the storm starts.
Okay.
And so it might get to 20 days. I don't remember the exact timeline, but it's definitely a pretty extensive period of time.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, it just says, like, so he'll get wrecked, he'll be in Phaeacia, but it'll be okay. So, like, that's spoilers. That's what's basically going to happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I had forgotten that was in there. And I guess my question that comes out of that is, like, does Odysseus think that he has free will? We talk about that often where, like, hypothetically, let's say we come down on the side of human beings have no free will. Mm-hmm. But it is important that we as human beings in that scenario would continue to believe that our actions are made of free will. Mm-hmm. And that kind of seems to be the camp Odysseus is in. Like, if it is true he has no free will, the gods have ordained everything, it seems important that he still believes his actions have importance.
Yeah, and I think one interesting way that Odysseus kind of articulates this, when Calypso tells him, you have permission to leave, Odysseus seems excited about this. And Calypso's like a little hurt. She's like, I'm literally like a goddess. You don't want to be with me forever? Like, what the heck? Like, you're like longing after some mortal woman? Like, what? Mm-hmm. And Odysseus is kind of apologetic to her and admits, and I'm curious to hear a more literal translation, but he says, loved and adored, O goddess, as thou art, forgive the weakness of a human heart. Like, Odysseus seems to admit that, like, yeah, by all accounts, he probably should want to just stay with a goddess forever. Mm-hmm. But through his humanity, he is, like, compelled to go back to Penelope.
Yeah.
Which does seem to be this admission of, like, a will that is not rational, but, like, is kind of his own. And it's like, I can't explain it, but, like, this is just, like, this is what I need to do.
Yeah. It's also interesting that Calypso, I believe when she's talking to Hermes, she implies that, like, her intentions are to turn Odysseus into, like, to make him immortal.
Yeah.
Along with her.
Yeah.
So he gets to live in this beautiful cave with the promise of immortality, and he's miserable about it.
Yeah.
And he vastly would prefer to be with Penelope and be mortal, which is just a very endearing part of his character. He whines a lot about being tormented by everybody, and how he's like, yeah, he whines a lot, but I feel like he kind of would have it no other way. Mm-hmm. He very much enjoys being immortal and, like, that constant process of, like, searching and changing.
Yeah.
And again, like the man in many faces, the man who's constantly shifting, and, like, it kind of is like a prison to make such a man immortal and unchanging.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the idea that, I mean, because at this point he has been on Calypso's island for multiple years at this point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for a person like him, like, to be on the same island with one person, you know, kind of just doing the same thing every day, even if that is kind of idyllic and paradisical, like, that becomes torturous to him. And he just wants the quest, the adventure, the sort of the striving for something new and something different. I think you've already kind of answered it, but when we see him crying at the beginning, you read it as, like, genuine.
Versus reading it as an act.
Yeah.
He's putting on an act. Well, even if he is putting on an act, oh, I'm so sad, please let me go, it would be an act for the same ends of getting off the island. Mm-hmm. It could be genuine.
Well, because I guess I just think, right, like, if we're thinking about Odysseus as the man of many turnings or many faces or many ways, the first version we see, like, is that the true version or is that one of the masks already? Because I do think it is important that like this is the first real like POV glimpse of Odysseus that we get.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is if he's crying for fake, if it's an act, then it's clear that it means to an end, right? But if he's crying for real, what is he crying about? Is it? I mean, he's obviously crying because he misses Penelope and he misses home, et cetera, et cetera. But like, there is when he is on his raft in the middle of a storm, yeah, he has some good lines about like, it really sucks I have to endure all this. If I'm gonna die on my own on a raft in the middle of the ocean, man, it would have been great if I just died at Troy instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make you think it was genuine then?
I think it could have been.
I'm not asking what it could have been. It could have been. That's what I'm saying. It could have been this or it could have been this. So which do you think?
Which do I think?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have to. I feel like you're making me decide something I don't need to decide. Like it could be either.
She refuses to answer the question. All of the theories are kind of possible. And so I guess what I want to do as we read is to write. Obviously, we recognize that many things could be a lie, but I want to like be able to theorize and see if we can pinpoint the true Odysseus and figure out what is the sort of core and what are the masks that he puts on, or to write, because if we simply just go could be, that feels like we then are kind of taking the stand that Odysseus is only masks and like he is only all the faces he puts on, and there isn't sort of a core Odysseus that then has some faces. And so that's what I want us to be able to think about that, so we're not just in a kind of like almost nihilistic, like, oh, nothing means anything that Odysseus says because it could just be a lie.
Okay. So here's my take then, in light of what you said. This is, so it's in the narration that describes Odysseus sitting on the shore, right? So it's like, it's Hermes coming to Calypso's cave, a description of the beautiful cave Calypso lives in. You can tell I'm jealous. And then it goes, but Hermes did not find Odysseus, since he was sitting by the shore as usual, sobbing in grief and pain. His heart was breaking. In tears he stared across the fruitless sea. And so it's very much like the orator of the story breaking to give us information that the characters in the moment don't have. So it's not like Hermes approaches the cave, he sees Odysseus around the corner crying. It's the narration saying Hermes could not find Odysseus because the narrator knows he is alone crying. And so the fact that Odysseus is alone and Hermes, he's not putting on an act for Hermes, who, makes me think that it is genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Because, like Odysseus doesn't seem to, be seeking anybody out to show them the tears. The other people have to find him and sort of confront him with this. The reading that this is like a glimpse at the genuine Odysseus makes sense because it is consistent with the idea that like he wants more adventure. He wants to be able to to have the opportunity to put on more masks, because again, if everything here is paradise, he doesn't need to like be wily or be clever. He's just kind of steady. Yeah. And so if we really do believe him to be the kind of person who loves wearing these masks and is good at it, then it makes sense for this first glimpse of him to be genuinely like in pain because he's not able to be sort of wearing masks and being all tricky and that.
But also like we have to remember he's also at this point in the story lost all of his companions, all of the men who he took to Troy, and then the men who survived Troy, and he was supposed to bring them back home. And we will find out in the flashback story he tells, like, why he is companionless. And so he has many reasons to be crying. Yeah. He's a war veteran. He has no friends. He wants to get home. He's been gone so long, he doesn't even know if Penelope and Telemachus are probably like alive even. And like, he doesn't even know, he knows nothing about that situation. Like I was thinking about this the other day, like if someone has been gone from their spouse for like 20 years, is it safe to say that like you can't assume that they're like even married anymore. Like when someone's been gone for 20 years, you've like had no communication with them, and then you show back up at home. It's like you can't assume anything about like that relationship or dynamic holds anymore. You know, that kind of stuff. Like he is like deeply, deeply alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I remember the first time I taught this book with freshmen, and we read this section, the freshmen got really worked up at a potential hypocrisy with Odysseus, where he does, I think, seem to be very genuinely sad about, you know, missing Penelope in this. But then it's also very clear that he goes and sleeps with Calypso that night.
Yeah.
And so, like, does he care about Penelope? Like, again, like I think the gut reaction of the freshman that I think is natural is like, well, if he cares that much, like, why is he sleeping with another woman so sort of easily and freely?
And I feel like, I mean, there's many things to say about that. I feel like one of them is that like you can like excuse away, you know, like man's failings by being like, that's just the way men were and are, I guess.
To me, there's a difference between what is expected sort of, or is culturally appropriate or culturally normalized versus what would be internally consistent. That like there can be things that are socially acceptable that would still create hypocrisy internally from an internal perspective. And so I think what freshmen, and I think I tend this way as well, to think is that like, yeah, sure, it is socially acceptable to do these things, but that also means like it is socially acceptable to be a bad person, because just the simple inconsistency internally, who cares if it's okay or not? It is still a bad thing to do, to sort of like to pine after one woman so deeply, but then so readily also sleep with a different one.
Yeah. And then yet another reading of this situation could be that what Odysseus finds attractive about Penelope has not as much to do with her physicality and her body, but he is cliche. He's attracted to her because of her mind and her personality.
Yeah. No, so actually, so to fill in the blanks, so the first year I taught this, I was actually co-teaching, and it was my first year teaching. So there was like the main teacher, and then I was kind of there as kind of assistant teacher. And the main teacher, shout out to Mr. Schott, when the students were sort of articulating this sense of hypocrisy, his sort of take that he sort of gave was that Odysseus remains faithful to Penelope in mind, but not in body. Like, yeah. And I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I think that's similar to what you're saying there.
Yeah, because when you paint it in some way, it still sounds like a big excuse.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, it's not. It means nothing. Like, it still sounds kind of gross. Though, like, we'll pay attention to when Odysseus and Penelope are fully like reunited. They stay up all night and talk to one another. And we can remember that when we get there. But Odysseus doesn't stay up all night and talk to anyone else. And it's not like he and Calypso are staying up late having a great conversation.
Right.
Well, again, we can look at it when we get there, this very specific language, but I'm not sure Odysseus and Penelope, when they reunite, that they like reunite physically. We can look in the text and figure that out. Or you can just be like, it's hypocrisy, and that's fine.
Yeah, because I'm just on this because I think it's important, not just for how we read the Odyssey, but how we read lots of old texts. Because I think nowadays there tends to be this mentality that I hear a lot of like, we can't impose our modern sort of morals or values onto sort of older texts that didn't, have the same cultural understandings. And I'm like, why not? Like, if we believe that our current cultural understandings of right and wrong are good and true, then we should want to hold others accountable to those standards, especially because if we really believe that they are true, then they should be self-evident, right? If we believe, and I'm not even going to say we anymore, like I believe that one being faithful to one's spouse is something that should be innately known within every human soul, absent from any cultural understanding. And so any cultural understanding that doesn't adhere to that is wrong. And any person who falls victim to that, ignoring what I believe to be an innate moral understanding that is deeply embedded within each human soul, that is worthy of criticism. Maybe, again, there can be more sympathy because there are so many other examples in the culture of sort of disobeying that sort of moral truth. But if we believe something to be morally truthful, then we should apply it across all times because we believe it to be universal. And the very idea of like we can't impose our modern morals on ancient text is sort of a morally relativistic position, and I am no moral relativist.
Obviously.
Let it be known.
Yeah.
Cheating on your spouse is wrong, period.
It's interesting to have such a famous character. Let's say the point of the text is to point out that he is hypocritical, to point out that he is making a morally wrong decision here.
Yeah.
Like that, I guess that is possible. And to think about that as a possibility and to take that seriously and say, okay, why would the text show us? Well, again, like maybe it feeds into this idea of we've had the past 4 books building up the man, the myth, the legend, the greatest man who ever was. And he's crying and being unfaithful to his wife. Like so, sometimes I just think about the crying part as the letdown. But what if we get this further letdown in this book of like
of saying he loves Penelope so much and yet then also has spent 3 years presumably sleeping with Calypso every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get in that view, right? We get a flawed character, which usually when we think about a flaw, when it comes to Greek characters, we're thinking about these like big tragic flaws that bite them in the butt, right? Particularly like when we read the Iliad and stuff, these big tragic flaws. But what about like the little flaws? Wait, this is good. This is building into something. What if this is the first taste we get, or the first instance we get of Odysseus's kind of big major flaw, which is like he doesn't know when enough is enough. He doesn't know when to stop sort of acquiring things for his own, I guess in this case, pleasure, but like for his own benefit. That does happen.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, he seems sort of like insatiable. And in many ways that can be a good thing where he's like ambitious and sort of always like willing. And I wonder then if that is part of his sadness, like he recognizes it like, oh, maybe I have become sated. Like he's become complacent here. And he's like, I've lost that sense of sort of like drive and ambition because now everything is kind of monotonous and maybe perfect, but like boring in that way. And he's kind of like, having this like wake up moment of like, wait, like what am I doing here?
Yeah. And even with the promise of like, well, tomorrow you can start building your raft and take off. He's still like,
Right.
Yeah, he's not like, okay,
let me start right now.
I'll start now. No, he's like, all right, first we got to get down to business.
Because I think like right back to my opening question about like what part of this is his own doing versus the gods. Obviously Calypso is giving him permission to leave, but the actual mechanism by which he leaves this raft is his own doing. Like he is given an axe and then he does build a raft all by himself, which is impressive.
Yes. Yeah, which I wanted to mention.
Right. But then again, the skeptic in me is also like, okay, so he could have done this the whole time?
Yeah.
Like maybe Calypso wouldn't have given him an axe and would have prevented him from doing it. And like that might have then gotten into the more sort of like forcefulness of Calypso's sort of keeping him there.
Yeah.
So there is that possibility. Like maybe she actually was being sort of really forceful about that. But
yeah, it's like, so when he talks to Calypso, he implies that like, unless he has the best, most favorable wind conditions, like a raft is not good enough. And that's what he is. A good raft is what he's capable of making. He doesn't, not a full ship or like a schooner, my translation says. And so I feel like that's his excuse that he's made himself believe. Like, I can't build something good enough to actually get out of here. And, that could have been true. It's also just like a convenient narrative device, kind of.
Right, because I think so often, and we will see in the future, we see Odysseus like willing to fight against the gods and to fight against nature and to be like, no, I'm taking this into my own hands. And so like the fact that like, well, he could be doing that here. And he does, like later in this book, he proves that like he's willing to just like cling on to a rock for dear life and just like grit it out. And so like if he's had this in him the whole time, again, like I keep questioning, like, well, why didn't he do this earlier?
Yeah.
Like he clearly doesn't actually care that much about being completely pious and obedient to the gods. And so, yeah.
He has been there for so long that if he had started building a real ship 3 years ago,
Right.
it would be completed by now.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he needed this moment to take stock of where he's at. Like sometimes you need 3 years to process where you are.
3 years out of the 17 you've already been gone.
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, I do miss my wife.
Yeah, sometimes I'm done making excuses for him. He can get his butt back on the road.
Yeah, because again, like I want to couch this, all my criticism here. Like once he does, right, he builds the raft, impressive. Once he's out on the ocean, he like he's very good at what he's doing. Like he's surviving. He's like, he like swims for like a full day, like after he crashes and is treading water for like hours and hours and hours.
2 days
like,
and nights he drifted on the waves. Each moment he expected he would die.
Odysseus is impressive. Like in this moment, he does live up to like all of the hype that has been put up about him.
Yeah, and the way he approaches getting onto the islands. Like first, the only land that's like visible to him is like these hard, craggy rock faces, not like a beach. And so he's like, if I get too close, I'm going to get slammed on those rocks, and that's not going to be good. He does get slammed on the rocks, but it's okay. He holds on for dear life. There's an epic simile.
Yeah, it's a good one.
As when an octopus, dragged from its den, has many pebbles sticking to its suckers, so his strong hands were skinned against the rocks. Like describing like how the wave is like and like sucking him out. And then he eventually works his way kind of like around the edge of the island and finds a nice place where the river is like letting out into the ocean, and he gets up there.
Again, back and forth, I think, of Odysseus doing this on his own versus with the help of the gods. He did have this sash from the sea nymph. And so again, that's a question of like, was this all his own doing, or was it only possible with the help of the gods?
Yeah. And Athena sees him struggling, and she like does this thing with the winds where she like stops all of them to make it calm, except for like one. Yeah. Like one wind to like push and even things out. So yeah, he has double help getting to shore. Yeah,
but also it's clear he is having extra trouble because Neptune like isn't on board with Zeus's Poseidon. Neptune isn't on board with Jove's plan to like let him go free. He's like, no, I'm going to make this hard for him. Yeah. And so yeah, he is both being fought against by the gods and aided by other gods as well.
Yeah. So it's like back in the Iliad, we had gods on different sides pushing and pulling on large groups of men. And now we have gods pushing and pulling just one man around. Yeah. Right? Like, so it's like on a different scale.
Yeah. This shows us Odysseus's unique position as like the plaything of the immortals. And like they kind of I have to think that they respect him like on both sides, that Neptune actually, like when he finally relents, like has a line where he's just kind of like, all right, you got me here, like go be with the Phaeacians for a while and then we'll be back at it. But there does seem to be this sense of like all of the gods recognize his craftiness and his strength and all of these things, and whether they are supporting him or working against him, like he has their respect.
Yeah, and so there's an interesting part. We see Calypso also. This part caught my attention because Wilson translates this as, this is Calypso talking to Odysseus, you scalawag. And I thought that was such a like cheeky thing for a god to say to a mortal. And I wanted to know more like what the actual, like what word is this that she's translating as scalawag, to understand better what's going on between Odysseus and how the gods view him and treat him.
And remind me of the context. What has he just said to warrant this reaction?
This is when she tells him, you can go now, and he's like, Are you sure? And
Oh,
she's
right, yeah, right after he's like, this is some trick, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
the
like,
first moment of his sort of like incredulity.
Yeah. And then her response is like, haha, you scalawag.
Yeah. And so we looked this up in the Greek, which transitions us into our Greek time.
It's Greek time, baby.
So the adjective that is being used as a noun, Greek does this often where you can have an adjective that then is just like the one who is this or the blank man or something like that. So the adjective used as a noun is alitros, which, you know, on the more literal level is to sort of sin or to trespass against or to fail in duty to. So it is, you know, one who transgresses, specifically and often used in the context of the gods.
Against the gods.
Yeah. But it's really interesting. Cunliffe's dictionary here that is again specifically for Homer, he often has notes about like different contexts in which this is used, and you know he'll cite, you know, in this line, and so he has a citation for this specific line in book 5, and he notes playfully. At least Cunliffe interprets this word being used by Calypso as being used sort of in this playful, teasing way. And so in that case, I think scalawag is kind of a good way of
yeah,
because
it's like a C term kind of, and so it's like, yeah.
And at least for a modern reader, like it has this, like it's a silly word sort of in a way. Like it's not actually an insult, or like I think often this term, right, like you who has sinned against the gods is seen as like a very bad thing, but like scalawag, you know, the way we think about it now, because again, Emily Wilson is translating for a modern contemporary audience.
Yeah.
She knows our expectations of the word scalawag and is inserting some of that sort of like teasingness.
Yeah, I think it's quite ironic for Calypso, a goddess herself, to be teasing Odysseus with this word that is basically just calling him impious. Like, it's one thing I feel like for mortals to be like you're being impious. Like, but it's a whole nother thing for a goddess herself to teasingly be like, haha, you're being naughty.
Right.
Which is how Lattimore,
Yeah.
isn't it Lattimore who translates it as naughty?
Yeah, Lattimore says, "You are so naughty."
In hopes of just wrapping up this book, basically it ends with Odysseus being naked and afraid. When he washes up on the shore of the Phaeacians' island, it's like, so when the one goddess comes to bring him the sash of good fortune, she specifically in her instructions, she's like, okay, you're going to jump in the ocean. Before you do that, take off the clothes, all the clothes that Calypso clothed you in, you know, before you jump in the water, which I think is just hilarious. It's like, first get naked, then jump in the ocean.
And put on my sash. Like,
yeah, and put on my sash.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, maybe there's a logistical reason. One being that when you're in the ocean, your clothes, when they get wet, they can like drag you down. And so they don't make you as good at swimming. But there is also this thing to track, which is Odysseus being constantly like he gets new skins everywhere he goes. He gets reclothed. So when he was under Calypso's like sort of control, he wears Calypso's clothes. He takes those off. He puts on sash. He gets to island, takes off sash. He will be naked for a little bit, but don't worry. Like, he looks haggard now, but the next people who find him, they will make him bright and shiny again, and they will clothe him in their clothes.
Yeah.
These kinds of things.
Yeah. And so to end book 5, there are two important sort of visuals that I think are both metaphorically resonant. One sort of for a long-term foreshadowing, and then one for a kind of like medium-term foreshadowing. So the first is Odysseus is kind of like wandering in the woods trying to find a place to sleep, and he stumbles across 2 trees that are kind of like woven together. One of them is a thorny thorn bush, and then the other is sort of an olive tree.
Yeah. Yeah, they grow together. No strong wet wind could blow through them. No shining sunbeam ever strike them. No rain could penetrate them. They were growing so thickly intertwined.
A simple explanation is that this is Odysseus and Penelope. Like there is a couple, like a pair that is sort of strongly interwoven that makes each other, like the interweaving makes each other strong. And one is this kind of like wild thing, and the other is the much more sort of like cultivated, sort of prim and proper, being Odysseus and Penelope. Because Penelope, again, is sort of back home. She is the kind of like stable, like regal presence, and Odysseus is the kind of like wild and sort of harried character. And so their relationship is this interesting intermixture of those two sort of personalities, just as these two trees are intermixing with one another. And so then, right, he crawls into the sort of den under these trees, and then there's a great simile to end.
As when a man who lives out on a lonely farm that has no neighbors buries a glowing torch inside black embers to save the seed of fire and keep a source, so was Odysseus concealed in leaves. And then he falls asleep. So Odysseus is the spark, catching fire.
Yeah. This is, as every English teacher will love to point out, rebirth.
Yes.
He is burying himself to be reborn the next day.
Yeah, but yeah. It's not the full, like the rebirth. It's like the foreshadowing of the rebirth.
It is the death that is necessary as a precursor to a rebirth.
Yeah. The whole thing with like the ember being buried kind of in these ashes, like the subtext being like all this ember needs is for someone to like gently blow on it, right? To just give it a little something to feed on. And then it...
Yeah, so this is kind of like the beginning of the end. Because I think it's also really important, right? Like the narrative is already funky because we start with Telemachus, but then, right, we get the classic, again, like English class term, the in media res, that many epic poems start in the middle of things. And in this case, it's not really in the middle. It's actually very close to the end. Like from this point in the narrative, washing up on the shores of the beach to when he gets home is very short.
Yeah.
And then we get flashbacks and he tells the story of how he got there. But we actually are beginning very close to the end. Book 6, when he sort of wakes up, like is actually going to be right the beginning of like the final leg of his journey home.
Mm-hmm. The lesson I learned today is that I am no longer apologizing for any of the hypocrisy or mistakes we see Odysseus make. Just because he's my favorite character doesn't mean I need to be apologizing for the decisions a man makes.
Yes. Okay. And
So
I will
going
continue
forward.
to point them out, not because I hate Odysseus, but because I think it's important to balance
Yes.
the like excitement about like all of his, great things with also like a healthy dose of like, he's also doing this in pretty skeptical ways.
Yeah.
Next week, we will have an episode on book 6. I have an audiobook recording of Samuel Butler's translation ready if you would like to listen along, or you can read in any other version, or just tune in because we'll summarize it and then we'll talk through it then.
And until then, happy reading.
Happy reading.